Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about combining exercises together. I like to discuss this from time to time because I routinely say things like, hey, the best exercise for any given muscle is to do two different good exercises for it, right? Because very, very rarely, if ever, are you going to find a single exercise that works every single muscle fiber in every head thoroughly of a muscle, right? There's always going to be something you don't get to, even if you're going to failure. Okay, so in this case, let's talk about triceps a little bit. And two of the exercises I'm going to talk about are two of the most basic exercises you will ever do. They're performed every day in pretty much every gym on earth. And that's a flat barbell bench press, which is, everyone's favorite lift. Right, single most popular lift in the world, pretty much, particularly in America. Right, it is seen as the masculine man's movement, and why it's become that. Who knows how in the heck that reputation started. And it's funny, because it really isn't. I know just as many women who love this exercise. So that's kind of funny, but that has always been the reputation for it. But when you think about it, a lot of people don't always realize that the bench press is actually a pretty good tricep exercise, right? The problem is that it doesn't give complete tricep development. It's not that it doesn't use a lot of tricep, because what are the primary movers? Pectorals. And, you can de-emphasize the chest a little bit, and you can find ways. People love to find ways to take their chest out of the bench press. They love to do that all the time. But it really is a chest exercise, and if you do it correctly, it will build the chest, and the chest will do the brunt of the work. It's an anterior deltoid, that's the front of your shoulder, and it's a tricep exercise. And what's been found in certain studies when they looked at this, I saw a study many years ago, I've referenced it quite a few times, it's pretty easy to find. Pretty old, pretty classic study that took a bunch of lifters and they're like, let's have one group do just the bench press. Right? We'll have a second group do just the laying tricep extension. Okay, so there we go. We've already got some interesting data. Then let's take a couple of mixed groups. So let's take a group of lifters and have them do bench press first in a workout, and then do the laying extension after. Then we'll do a reverse group. So they're like, let's make 4 different groups plus our control group. Right, so they have 4 experimental groups, and that's always interesting when you get that, because then we can collect all sorts of data from that. And they found some interesting things. They measured muscle mass in the different heads of the triceps from these groups, and then they measured strength, right? And they measured bench press strength. They wanted to know how all this affected the bench press and all this stuff. So it's a pretty interesting experiment, because they collected several different sets of data, right, to get a variety of information ranging on exercise order to exercise selection. But let's talk mainly about the triceps. Because what did they find? Well, they found what anatomy tells us we should see. When you look at the bench press and you look at the biomechanics involved, the brunt of the arm work is done by 2 heads of the tricep, right? 2 heads on the bottom half of the tricep. The lateral head, which is the one on the outside of the arm, where it attaches at the elbow. And then the medial head, which is a little smaller one you can see in the video where I'm benching, right? The one on the inside of the arm where it attaches at the elbow. Now, the whole tricep gets worked, but the long head doesn't get full activation. Why? Because there's no stretch being put on the shoulder. So you need that shoulder extension, and that the tricep needs to be stretched a little bit to really get that head to activate. Now watch what happens when I do the extension laying here. See that? All right, now that long head is the one by the armpit. That medial head, okay? That one isn't really as involved in the elbows, right? It isn't as involved in the extension of the elbows. It is involved in that rotation of the shoulder right there, and that stretch. That's where the majority of its activation is involved. Now keep in mind, this is one big muscle, so everything is involved to some extent. But that's really what it does, and it's because it attaches up there. So it's involved in that action. So, what do you think the study showed? Guess which heads of the tricep grew the most from the bench press? Well, the ones that are working the hardest. Lo and behold, big surprise, right? Should that come as a big surprise? All right, interestingly enough, which ones do you think grew the most in the extension? Really all of them, but even though the elbow gets moved, like look at that, you still have the extension of the elbow happening there. So technically those other heads are heavily involved, but the long head grew more, right? The one down near the armpit. That lateral head, that outer one, grew less from the extension than it did from the bench press. Okay. I mean, even though you can see it's clearly working, it was a statistically significant difference. Okay. Which group do you think grew the tricep the most? The whole tricep. It shouldn't be difficult to figure out based on what I just told you. When the bench press only grew the lateral head the biggest, and the laying extension group grew the long head the biggest, what do you think happened when both of them were trained? The whole tricep grew. Right? You got all the accumulated growth of both. The lateral head got just as big as the bench only group. The long head got just as big as the extension group. And I think a little bit of overall, the whole thing might have got slightly bigger. Well, that's a winner. Believe it or not, though, they didn't get as good a results off the one where they did the extension than the bench. So the best results were obtained by doing the sets of bench press first and then doing the sets of laying extension after. That produced the best overall growth in the muscle, which kind of supports the idea of what I've been saying for a long time. It's the best way to grow a muscle. Do 2 different exercises that are good exercises for the same muscle. Ideally, 2 exercises that slightly work a different function or a different angle. What does that mean? For pecs, maybe do a flat and an incline press, or a flat press and a pullover, right? Something like that. Okay, just as an example. But this is a perfect example, and it was one that is directly supported, by a study that looked at it and had multiple variable groups, had a good control group, and it was a pretty decently done classic study. And it does exactly what we would expect to happen. I mean, that is literally what we would expect to happen, confirmed in a study. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys next time.